set.
Color's good?
Yeah.
Not black and white? No, okay. Just checking.
Depends on when you were born. Lots of white and some.
Are we ready for a roll call? Sorry.
Ready?
Anytime.
Director Slater Carter.
Present.
Director Boyd.
Present.
Director Wilson.
Here.
Director Harvey.
Here.
Director Huber.
Here. All right. Well, welcome everyone. It's been a while since we've had a board meeting. I don't have anything else to say at this point in time. So with that in mind, do we have any oral communication on items not on the agenda?
Yes,
Yes.
one woman and one person is just walking in. She got here later than me.
Okay, do you think she's got an item not on the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, I do as well.
Why don't you start?
Okay, so the San Mateo County Resources Conservation District is every year in charge of the First Flush program. And the First Flush program is something that this district has supported financially since a very long time. It goes through the sewer authority. On the coast side, all member agencies are participating and actually financing the First Flush program. And what it is folks essentially taking water samples during the first rain event to see what the pollutants in them are and to try to understand where they're going and where they're ending up. And so this is something that usually happens between late September and late October, and volunteers are needed. And so the San Mateo County Resources Conservation District is asking for participation from folks. And if anyone wants to participate, they can contact us or directly the RCD. We can establish contact. They're also actually inviting volunteers for a one-day event on September 23rd. That's actually a half-day event from 9 o'clock in the morning. And that is to pick up dog poop to prevent the bacteria pollution essentially being washed into our waterways. So anyone interested there can also contact the RCD or us directly.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Ma'am? Kathy, do you have an item that's not on the agenda? Why don't you come on up?
Hi. My name is Marcia Yates.
And the, go to the
side.
My name is Marcia Yates, and I live in Moss Beach, and my affiliation is with Resist Density. I'm just here to say that Resist Density went to the Mid-Penn pre-app meeting yesterday, and unfortunately, the discussion has turned into two tracks. One is the critical housing shortage that Resist Density realizes that's very important and we need more housing. But what Resist Density is really, our emphasis is on infrastructure, environment, and traffic safety. And I just want to let everybody know and remind them that we are not against housing, affordable housing, and we really want, if there's going to be more housing, we really believe there should be a better infrastructure, a stronger infrastructure, the sewage spillages, the inadequate roads and such. So I just want to let everybody know, Resist Density, and I do have some flyers that we put out yesterday with regard to this, with the SSOs and our position statements. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I would also add that the meeting that the county held was not recorded. So people can't watch it to see the opinion of Mid-Campbell County or Resistance, unfortunately.
On the back of Catherine's.
Excuse me, let me interrupt. My processor didn't get on, it usually stays on. Can you hand me the password, please? To get on to the internet?
Oh, it's not
Could you write
there.
down for me, please? Yeah, usually it comes on, but it didn't.
Yeah, it's usually right there. Tracy's on her way to pick up.
I apologize.
Oh, technical difficulties.
Go ahead, Kat.
Well, while we're waiting for the agenda, then I will make a comment about the importance of, given the recent earthquake in Mexico City and the spate of hurricanes that we've had, for people to make sure that they do have their emergency supplies and family emergency plans as well. This district does have emergency generators and will do what we,
Thank you.
what is necessary to keep your water and sewer working, but certainly it's very important for each individual homeowner and resident in Montara and Moss Beach and on the coastside to also have supplies for themselves, since we only have one building now. Thank you.
Okay. Any other items that is, if anybody want to speak to anything that's not an item on the agenda? Okay, if it's okay with you, Jim, I'm going to
Go, please.
go through it then. We have the consent agenda. There are 10 items. One is to approve the minutes for the meetings on July 6th and August 3. 2 is to approve the financial statement for July 2017. 3 is to approve the warrants for August 1, 2017. 4 is the SAM flow report for June 2017. 5 is the monthly review of the current investment portfolio. 6 is the connection permit applications received. 7 is the monthly water production report for June 2017. 8 is the rain report. 9 is the solar energy report. And 10 is the monthly public agency retirement service report for June 2017. Are there any items that anybody wishes to pull from the consent agenda? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Nothing. Okay, we have no old business, so we have a new business. We're going to start with review, excuse me here real quick, I went too fast. Review and possible action concerning amendment extending the solid waste franchise agreement with the Ecology of the Coast. Comments?
Yeah, thank you, Dwight. So we are now at the end of the initial term of the district's franchise agreement with Recology of the Coast. This is the first one with Recology. Before we had the contract with Seacoast Disposal, which was bought at the time by Recology. So we're essentially dealing with the same entity now, different name. So again, the agreement expires at the end of this calendar year, and Recology informed us that it intends to extend the agreement through an amendment, and that's how the current contract spells this out, how this is supposed to be done. And so before we went into looking at how we can structure this, Recology actually sent out a customer survey, and that was to look at the addition of a weekly composting program. So right now we're getting the bi-weekly green waste program, and there was some voices that asked for a weekly composting program. And we actually have the individual customer responses, and a total of 36% of the customer base responded. I think that's very favorable, actually. A high number of our solid waste customers responded to this survey. And in favor of the addition of the composting program were 106 customers, that is 16.2% of the responses. 207 or 31.7% of the responses indicated that they're happy with the current green waste program, so that's a much higher number. They also compost on their own an additional 301, so over 500 people really indicated that they're happy with the existing green waste program. 39 or 5.9 indicate that they don't use green waste program and instead rely on a gardener to remove the waste. So what we're seeing is that a lot of folks already are composting, and that most actually would like to keep the services at a similar level. So we sat down with Recology and negotiated a minor amendment to the to essentially to extend the existing agreement, and we have a number of changes that I'm going to let everyone know what they are. First one is, and that was also already published by Recology, customers will receive a 96-gallon green waste card this fall. They also can continue to use one of their own 30-gallon cards that cannot exceed 25 pounds in weight. So we'll essentially get 126 gallons of green waste service. That's an increase in service. Also, the standardized can. Anyone having difficulties handling the 96-gallon card can contact Recology, and that will be addressed on an individual basis. This is something that's already in the existing agreement anyways. Anyone with problems getting the cans to the street, to the curb, can talk to Recology, and there will be a solution worked out. I want to point out that that Pillar Ridge will receive the existing service for Pillar Ridge customers. There's not enough green waste. Storage is very limited, so we received a request from the management there, so services stay the same. Anyone in Pillar Ridge who wants the 96-gallon container can simply request it anyways. Additionally, want to point out that once that change is, or when we implement the change, Recology will, of course, inform our customers through flyer and other means on how this all works, what to do with the old cans. The old cans can be picked up for free and recycled by Recology. The next one is a rate stabilization clause, and this actually has recently changed. The Solid Waste Committee took a look at this, and that now essentially is that we're looking at a formula that essentially establish the cost for Recology, and then comes up with an annual rate increase. So the rate stabilization clause essentially says that everything above 6% can be deferred to a following year. And that can go on until the end of the contract. At the end of the contract, there would then be a catch-up if that wouldn't be caught up by the end of the 10 years. So this is designed to prevent a potential rate shock of substantial increases in a single year. We've seen that in 2016. We've seen a substantial rate increase, but I think that was due to circumstances that we are probably not going to see during the 10 years here. It was essentially a big catch-up. We knew that Recology was operating at a loss, and that is not the case anymore. Also, the extended agreement begins on January 1, 2018, as it's here suggested, and expires on December 31, 2027. So that's a 10-year extension, and we're believing that this actually benefits both Recology as well as the district. If we choose to terminate the contract earlier, as it's spelled out in the existing contract already, the district agrees to purchase the Recology issued cards at depreciated value. So after 3, 4, 5 years, that number should go down significantly. Recology agrees also to submit the required information for the annual rate increases 1 month earlier. That's something that we requested that allows us more time to review the documents and initiate the required Prop 218 process for a rate increase. And another change, that is one that Recology has been asking for a long time, and that is the start time for waste pickup will now be allowed at 6 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. This is done essentially solely for safety reasons, and I also believe that this is actually benefiting both our customers, the community, as well as Recology, getting the heavy trucks in and out before the heavy traffic starts is I think, a good idea. So we have Chris Porter here, General Manager from Recology, to answer any questions, address any concerns that might come up. Staff's recommendation is to adopt the resolution approving and authorizing execution of the first amendment to the franchise agreement for solid waste and recycling services.
Okay, so maybe we can give the manager anything you would like to say in addition to what Clemens has stated.
Well, I have one quick comment, and that is, in the staff report, it says that the rate stabilization clause, it says the annual rate increase above 5% can be deferred, and so what you're saying is above 5%, but not to exceed 6%.
No, there's a new document.
No. This document came out on Friday,
Okay.
and we met as the committee on Monday and revised those terms.
Okay, for the
So-
minutes, I think it's important to note that.
Okay.
And just for our information, that was sent to us yesterday, so.
Oh, yes, I know that, but I just wanted for the minutes for it to be clear.
Okay. Do you want to have any comments, and then we'll open it up for public?
My name is Chris Porter, and I am the General Manager of Recology of the Coast. Been so for 33 years now, and worked with the district.
Are you going to stay during the life of the contract? Do we stipulate that that was part of the deal?
My bosses think that would be a great idea. Anyway, I just want to say how much I've enjoyed working within the district, and to say that I think we have a lot of triumphs in the district. We have services that are not offered in cities on the coast side. And by doing this, we have achieved a 72% diversion, which is one of the highest in Northern California. And it's by the programs that we have, the 4-time-a-year bulky pickup, the 4-time-a-year, the 4 items a year, the 4 times a year drop off. We have shredding events. We have compost giveaways. We have things that are unique to this area. We also work with the Pacifica Beach Coalition and the Heirs to the Ocean to keep the beaches clean. And these are things that we just do because we are part of the community as well as servicing the community. If someone tries to get a hold of Recology of the Coast, you can get the general manager morning, noon, or night, not like some other companies that you can never even contact any of their management. So, and you've had the same drivers. One of your drivers just retired, and he'd been a driver here for 30 years. And another one of our drivers, the regular garbage driver, has been a driver in this area for 25 years. So they know the customers, they know the people that leave their can up by the gate, or they know the lady that needs help bringing this out or that out. So I think that's a plus to the overall service that is received. Anyway, I'm very excited about this contract, and I'm excited. Clemens and I have a few ideas of different things that we want to do, and I hope you're excited too. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll turn it for any public comment regarding the contract. Does anybody want to speak to the contract? Hearing none, board?
Yeah, I'll start. I took a look at Clemens' work and the staff report, and it was very fortunate that Half Moon Bay just recently did a new contract for the same thing. And so it gave me a chance to sort of compare and contrast. That it's different than what's going on in Half Moon Bay, in that theirs is a fixed fee contract, where ours is really sort of a cost plus contract. The most significant thing is, and I didn't try to look at it in extreme depths, but the general pickup of a residential container, same size, the rate is approximately 24% less than their rate. So, and I think that that's fairly significant. The other issue is the 6 a.m. starting time is, interestingly, in their contract for residential customers. For commercial customers, they actually start at 4 o'clock in the morning.
But you're saying Half Moon Bay starts at 4?
For commercial.
Yes.
But residential, they start at 6 the same time. So that the one thing that, and this is something we hashed out in the subcommittee, was the fact that concern was that in any given year that the rate would go above 5%, and then we later agreed to 6%. So in essence, what we have is, one, that through the whole life of the contract, that the rate will never really go above 6%, except at the very end. And then we have some risk there that if inflation was great, or if there was fuel costs really went up or something like this, we would have a balloon payment at the very end. I think, speaking for myself, but also I think Clemens feels the same way, that we feel that risk is fairly low, and that the advantage of both the level of service that we received and the rates that we're being charged, that we feel pretty confident that this is a decent contract.
Okay. Catherine, you're on that group too.
I sat through many of the hearings in Half Moon Bay. Kudos to Recology and to Seacoast and Chris. At our 72% diversion, Half Moon Bay is at 34% diversion. The state passed a bill in 2000 saying that communities needed to be at 50%. That was 17 years ago. We exceeded 50%, as I recall, in the year 2000 and previous. And that didn't include all of the composting that people do privately on their own property, so we were much higher then. With the 24% less, Half Moon Bay does not pick up, and Recology does, our on-call bulky item. And they don't hold, I believe they do not have drop-offs for the citizens of Half Moon Bay, whereas we have 4 a year at Farallon View, which is, if you've ever been there and seen the lines of people dropping stuff off, it's a service that I think people would be very upset if we didn't have it. And so there are other items, I'll let Chris go into it if she cares to, but we get far superior service. And as she said, people know and appreciate Recology for its personal involvement, its corporate involvement. Chris was telling me that Recology is right now working with Farallon View School to put in a greenhouse project for the kids to be able to experience growing, and I don't quite know what the program will be. That will be worked out, but Recology is taking a lead on that. And so been working with Chris for 20 years. And one of the things I will say is dealing with Chris on the solid waste issues for Montara. Chris, and as a compliment to her companies, because she couldn't have this concern if her companies had not supported her, is concerned about what goes on in this community. And when people, for instance, call and say somebody dumped a pile of trash out here, Ecology goes and picks it up. Not that I am asking people to please don't do that, but it is, Ecology and Chris have been helping keep our community, the quality of life here very well. And it's much appreciated. And the contract, when Bill and I first looked at it, did not have a cap on the rate increases, and Chris went to bat for us because she knows there are many people here on limited incomes and tight finances, and she understood the need for keeping our rates within a predictable range for everyone. So I would recommend a yes vote.
Jim and Scott?
I agree with Bill and Catherine's comments. Thank you.
Scott?
Thanks for doing the work.
Do we have a motion for this?
So moved.
It's a resolution, but it has read. So,
I second the motion.
okay. We can just do all in favor, correct? Do we have to do a roll call? Always had a lawyer here. Okay, roll call.
Director Slater Carter.
Aye.
Director Boyd.
Aye.
Director Wilson.
Aye.
Director Harvey.
Aye.
Director Hebert.
Aye.
It passes 5-0. I think the compliments to the Ecology from everything that's been stated, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
You'll have to see me for another 10 years.
Well, again, I think I did see language in there that if you retire, the rate increases go down to 2% a year.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, the next agenda item is the receipt of the Alta Vista well update. Clemens.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joy. So at the very beginning of the district getting involved into the water system here, or taking over the water system, that was in 2003, the board immediately authorized a well exploration program at the time, and a number of boreholes and wells were drilled during that initial exploration phase. And I think the most the well-known well is, of course, our Alta Vista well, because that turned out to be a good producer. And at the time, I was fascinated that geologists would point to the top of a hill, the top of a ridge, ultimately, and say, let's drill here, because now you just got to drill deeper, of course, than in the valley. But balance at the time looked really at fractures, fractured directions, and zones, and that was one where two directions intersected, and there was, so they saw at the time that there was a good chance that it would bear water. And what is not well known is that most of the other wells around are monitoring wells. So we kept most of them in decent shape and have data loggers in them and collect information. So we have a little system, a network set up, monitoring network set up. And that was good so, because when we went to the California Coastal Commission to get this well approved, the commission required that we establish a monitoring program that looks at what happens to, for example, the riparian habitat down below in the flower fields. And so how does this well really interact with the shallower aquifer was of great interest. And We've continued doing that. What also was of great interest to the board at the beginning was, of course, that the well is that the water that it is sustainable. We want to know that we can actually pump the well at the rate that it is allowed to pump. So the Coastal Commission had a hydrogeologist take a very close look at this well and allowed us to pump it at a maximum of 150 gallons per minute over a 24-hour period. And we want to really still understand more about this aquifer, because it is unlike most aquifers that are used for drinking water purposes. This is an aquifer that's in solid rock. This is a big piece of granite, Montara Mountain, and again, most other wells, like for example, our flower field wells or the airport wells, are in non-consolidated sediments, alluvial fan deposits, or similar, so sand gravel mixes, and are somewhat simple to understand because it's a uniform pore space down below that's filled with water. And that is not the case in the granite. We've since actually had a wonderful presentation from Barry Hecht here and Mark Wojcner about our stream monitoring, and about actually the stream monitoring that Coastside County Water District did at the time when they considered increasing their water diversion from Denniston and San Vicente Creek. And that showed, we also looked at the information that was collected in the district for that purpose. And that really showed that the Montara Mountain is behaving very different, that the creeks on Montara Mountain, Montara Creek is really behaving very differently than other streams in the area, and that it retains water much longer, and that the flow volume really is based on prior year's precipitation. And so we knew this also from our experience operating the plant. We know that after the initial rains, of course they're contributing quite a bit. In the summertime, we actually see an increase in flow rate, and that's somewhat counterproductive. Where you would expect the water to recede, we actually sometimes see an increase and a sustained water production in the springs. And so we really want to understand more about this aquifer. So now that we learned a little bit how fractured that entire mountain is and how vast the system is, we also since actually drilled 2 boreholes that let us know a little bit more about this aquifer, and we found in similar depth some water, so we can conclude that there's some interconnection. We have our Portola 3 well that also is producing very well now. And so we really are looking to understand a bit more about the water that we're producing. And that's where I'm very excited to share the results of what we've been doing all these years with the board. So there was a lot of sampling meetings, discussions in the background, and this is really now the time where we want to share some of this with the board. By the way, one of the reasons why we're sharing this with the board is also that Mark actually submitted a paper to the Groundwater Resources Association 2017 conference, and so we're going to actually go to Sacramento, and Mark's going to present what he's presenting tonight to the group of geologists there, and we look at this also as something very interesting for us, getting some feedback and seeing how we're actually managing this aquifer, because this is really something that's not, we're actually kind of exploring new territory here. So with all that, Mark, I'd like to hand this over to you. I think Mark actually has a slideshow, so Dwight,
move, huh?
Jim, you know what that
I've
means?
got a few photos and maps we can look at. And, yeah.
And oh, by the way, I wanted to take also the opportunity to present Gustavo Porras, who's been doing all the field work here since, what, 10 years, 12 years? Long time.
20 years, yeah.
Okay.
You know that part of the mountain.
Oh, I sure do.
So the well was drilled in 2004, along with 4 other wells. So, and here we are in 2017. And we've been collecting data since 2004. Initially, and actually before then too, it actually, as this pulls up,
A few of the lights,
Okay.
maybe would that help again?
It should come up. I just turned the front off.
It's getting late.
you know,
That helps.
what I'm not sure about this is, here we go. So, yeah, so the 4 of us, but there's actually more people involved since with this. Of course, the board, we've been here a long time, Scott, Catherine, Jim, and Paul actually was pretty instrumental. And at that time, you know, hats off, a big salute to George Irving, who really led the charge on a lot of this exploration. Making day-to-day decisions with him was really a pleasure. So yeah, this is the let's see if I can work this. How do I get a cursor? I'm gonna use the pen. Point at some things. Okay.
There it is.
It works.
Yes.
Oh, there we go. But it doesn't show up on the. Oh, it's really difficult. Okay. Well, anyway, so this is the old tank site, and so this is a drill rig up on the ridge between Daffodil Canyon and Montara Creek. That's the North Fork of Montara Creek. It continues down here. So, and Barry wanted to be here tonight. He had a family gathering, and of course Gustavo's here and Clemens. And what I'd like to go over is just a summary of the Alta Vista well in general, and then dig into modeling, monitoring results, the rainfall, pumping rates, stream flow gauging, groundwater level sampling for groundwater age, and recharge estimates. And then we'll look at a few conclusions. So it's Alta Vista well characteristics. So it's completed in July of oh, pardon me, I've got a mistake there. It's 2004, July 2004 and 14. And it's a deep well, 780 feet below ground surface, and ground surface is 530 feet at the wellhead. What's unique about this well is it draws from open fractures or joints in the bedrock at the bottom of the well, pretty much below 700 feet. There are open fractures, open joints, regional joints that are several inches to a foot, over a foot open. And that's where pretty much all the water comes from at a depth of 700 feet, below 700 feet. We encountered, drilling the well, we encountered 235 feet of weathered granites, which is significant. A lot of the domestic wells that are completed in Montara Mountain are drawing from that perched aquifer down to about 200, the weathered granitics. And there's a perched aquifer, what we call perched, there's groundwater sitting in the weathered granitics on top of the fractured bedrock. And so that's where a lot of the wells in Montara, a lot of the granitic wells draw water from. This well draws from a very deep, much deeper than that, from unweathered granites, fractured granites. And so knowing this, we completed the well in a manner that isolates the perched aquifer from the deep joints that this well draws from. So that's a quick summary of the characteristics of the well. What we didn't mention is that and not on the slide, is the water quality is especially good. It's probably as good as anything on the coast. It's got low, with about 160 dissolved solids, milligrams per liter dissolved solids. Iron and manganese is low. Just very good water. No nitrates. So this is, I want to give you a bigger picture along the coast. Let's see if this works. That hurts my screen. This is a way to do that. So Montara Mountain is on that map. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can pull down the cursor. There's something.
You can see this, the third one down
On the ocean side.
on the ocean side.
Laser pointed. There we go. You got it working. All right. So yeah, you can see that Montara Mountain. So the red here is granitic rocks, and they're basically a surface feature of a broader what's called the Selenian granitic rock plate. It's a small plate. It's the Selenian plate, and the basement rock of that plate is granitic rock. And so it was once molten and solidified to form a crystalline rock. And so we see this on Montara Mountain, Ben Lomond, Point Reyes, and all the way up Bodega Head. It's bounded by the San Andreas Fault on the east, and the Garlock Fault truncates it on the south. And then along the coast here, it's the San Gregorio Seal Cove Fault that bounds it on the west. And the other colors here are sediments, marine sediments that have deposited on top of the basement granite rock. So Montara Mountain is very unique, and it's similar to the Sierras, but what's different is it hasn't been glaciated. So it's deeply weathered. In the Sierra, all that weathering has been eroded by glaciers. So that's what makes Montara quite unique, and that it has this deep weathering zone that's, you could think of like a sponge. Rainfall and fog drift captures or infiltrates into the weathered granite. It's a lot easier than if they weren't that deeply weathered. And so Clemens mentioned, why drill there when there's all these other. The conventional thought at the time was we're looking at the sediments in the airport aquifer, and also Ocean View Farm sediments over here. So we started. In fact, there was a DWR, Department of Water Resources report in 1999 that recommended drilling in the Ocean View Farms area. So the first two wells that we drilled were in 2004 were in that area. Then district owned property up here. And we were looking at fractures, and we did fracture mapping here. This came from public. These are directions of joints and folds in granite. And if you look at, and this is up along the ridge of the mountain. Here's the fire trail that goes up Martini Creek up along the ridge. And so USGS published, Papillon from the USGS published a geologic map of this area, and on that map there are these fracture orientations showing the direction and the dips of the fractures. And so we looked at some of that, and also following the stream courses, you can see how it's not a direct route, how it follows, inflections in the stream, and basically follows different joints that have weathered. So that's the benefit of deep weathering, is that these joints are pretty obvious and apparent in the stream courses. You can see how this little joint here, it kind of shows up over here as well. And also these pink lines are faults that parallel the San Andreas fault that we looked at. And so here's Montara Creek, it hits a fault and it goes this way. So between the faults and the joint, the creeks follow this. So here's an inflection, it goes across here and then follows this fault. There's some inflections here. And then a lot of these directions also track the same, there's a north, there's north-south orientation to a lot of these joints. And we lined up a lot of these surface features, trends, crossing the district's property up on Alta Vista Road. And we first drilled this well here, 2004-3, that's a third well after drilling these wells. We drilled one here, and we went to 800 feet and got very low yields. It was very disappointing. And also picked up a little bit of arsenic. And so, talking to George, and he said, well, let's move down. These joints aren't all vertical. Some have dip to them, and so we projected some dip out to it, and figured, well, let's drill at this end of the property, which is closer to the treatment plant. And sure enough, this is Alta Vista well. At the same time, we were also drilling down in this Coast Wholesale Florist property down in Montara Creek. So that's what this, and then after we drilled the well, we did some geophysics. That's where all these lineations, joint directionals, and the open joints at the bottom of the well happen to be a north-south joint, and that's what this is all about. This dash line kind of estimates the direction, and it's dipping eastward. So we have a north striking joint that's dipping into the mountain. So we have this open joint that's kind of capturing groundwater flow from high elevation to low elevation. Groundwater flow towards the coast is intersecting, potentially, conceptually intersecting this open joint. So we're really pleased in intersecting that. Was actually quite surprised at high yields. And in hindsight, if we probably would have continued drilling deeper here, we probably could have intersected that same joint, but who knows? According to the way, if we would drill another couple hundred feet, we could have maybe intersected that joint as well. So what I want to do, I put this up here. I want to show you this cross-section, A8 prime. It goes across Montara Creek, this North Fork and Montara Creek, through the Alta Vista well, and then to the coast through this Ocean View Farms area, and then Montara City Beach. And these pink and yellow shadings represent colluvium, up in the, colluvial wedges, and then creek of colluvium down in the valleys. I can talk more about that, but let's move on. So this is the cross-section A prime, and that kind of gives you a more schematic look at Alta Vista Wells, just right here. It's on that ridge between Montara Creek and North Fork Montara Creek, which is right here, and then the Deathville Canyon. And so this is 780 feet. The upper parts and weathered granites, and then upper 230 feet or so of weathered granites, and then work our way into the fractured bedrock. And so this is what I was explaining here. We sealed this off with a 370 foot 12-inch steel casing. 12-inch steel casing to a depth of 370 feet. And that was cemented in, so it sealed off this whole upper portion of the borehole, and the bottom below that was left an open hole, basically, and pretty much solid, poorly fractured granites over the most of that section until we hit those deep joints. And that's what these are here. We intersect a couple of them. So this isolates, surface. Here's Montara Creek alluvium, and then there's a number of residential wells in here. So this well is isolated from those deeper, from those shallow wells. And here's one of the others. This is the first well we drilled at Ocean View Farms. And this is another one right at the mouth of Deathville Canyon to show you the depths of those. And so this is a picture that we took after intersecting those deep fractures. And basically, we're drilling with compressed air. The Majora brothers were the drillers. They, as soon as we hit and drilled through those open fractures, water just came spouting out. And we stopped drilling shortly after. So this is a picture of it. And then so shortly following the completion of the test, we did 8-hour pump test at 300 gallons a minute. So the results were favorable. We continued with a 5-day pumping test, 300 gallons a minute. And results were quite favorable. It didn't show any connection to the surface flows or nearby monitoring wells. And then just prior to setting, after installing the pump and hooking it to the distribution system, and there's, I guess, it was required by the Coastal Commission. That they do a 60-day pumping test. So we did a 60-day pumping test at 40 gallons a minute in November of 2007. Shortly after, we guess the district continued pumping. So most of this talk now, and moving forward, is the monitoring from the start of pumping the well in 2007 to the end of 2016. And so the question came up: what is a sustainable yield? We know it can easily pump 300 gallons a minute, but there's a difference between the maximum day demand or the maximum day pumping rate and what it can do long term. And there's a lot of discussion in the statewide and especially with Sigma about what is sustainable yield. And here we have a well that's intersecting deep fractures. Clemens pointed out that a lot of uncertainty in developing sustainable yield estimates in fractured granite like this, fractured bedrock. There's a lot of methods, many methods to estimate sustainable yield in a basin filled with sediment, but bedrock is a lot different. So what we propose is that the long-term success of pumping the well is best evaluated through a cycle of recharge years, very wet years like we had in 1998. We had one in 2006, wet year, and then just most recently we had a wet year, 2017. Going from a wet year peak, through drought cycles and then back up to a wet year peak, how does this well, perform? And do we see limits? Do we see constraints and boundaries to the pumping well? So 2000, this is a plot, a graphic of the annual rainfalls in blue as a percent of mean. So at 100%, this would be mean rainfall. And anything below 100 is a dry year, and above 100 is a wet year. So we started pumping in water year 2008, and that was the second year of a drought. 2007 was 2005 and 2006 were wet years, and then 2007 was the first year of a drought. So the second year of the drought, we started pumping it, and then 2009 was a drought year, and then 2010 was near normal and slightly wet, and then 2011 was a wet year with 125 or about 130, close to 130% normal. Then we went into a more extreme drought, a series of drought years, dry years. 2012, 13, 14 was an extreme, that we all remember that one, comparable to 1977. And then 2015 was 80% normal, dry year, but improved a little bit from this extreme. And then 2016 was near normal, a little on the dry side, near normal. And so pumping during that period, first 5 years was pretty steady, somewhere around 60 gallons a minute on average, if you're averaging out for an annual average. And then, there's always a little bit of play with all these wells. One goes down, one needs some retrofitting, change of pump, whatever, and you have to rely more on different wells. And it just so happened that the district needed to rely heavily on the Alta Vista well during 2013 and 2014, which corresponded with one of the driest years in history of the coast. 2014 had the highest pumping rates of this period, this 9-year period. So it was a real test of the aquifer. Is 300 gallons a minute realistic, or 60 gallons a minute more realistic? And so I threw this in where I was looking at some flow data in Pescadero Creek. I threw this in just to, because I know you guys are interested in this kind of stuff. This is base flow, basically from March through October in Pescadero Creek, from 2012, through the drought, this extreme drought, 12, 13, 14. This green line is the extreme dry year, and then 15, 16. So what's interesting here, and these gray lines are these percentiles. 50% percentile here is the median daily flow. So, and what's very interesting here is 2012 was a blue line here in 2000. So it was first year of the drought. It pretty much tracked median flow. And then the second year of the drought, you were here bouncing between 10 percentile and 25th percentile. And then comes 2014. This kind of illustrates how severe 2014 was. It tracked below the 5th percentile, and by the end of the dry season, it was way down here below the 5th percentile. Challenging to 1977 as the driest year. Pescadero Creek went dry for a month in 1977. So, and then the 15, 16 rebounded, you know, there was a rainfall, a little bit more rainfall, rebounded back up into this 10th and 12th, 25th percentile, and then back up to median flow in 2016. So that kind of gives you a regional look how severe that drought was. So Clemens mentioned that the monitoring the Alta Vista wells up here. Take a quick look at this. Here's Daffodil Canyon. This is the ridge between Daffodil Canyon and Montara Creek. And this is the diversion going over the treatment plant and the storage. So Alta Vista wells up the road, and then the other bedrock well is further up the road. This is an important. What's important here is this bedrock well. It's the same depth as the Alta Vista well, and I believe it's, I forget now, maybe 300 feet away. What is that scale? About 500 feet. It's a little closer to 500 feet up the road. And then the other important thing here is we have two shallow monitoring wells, NW1 and NW2, right next to Montara Creek. So we figured, you know, there's this wetland here. It's not wetland, but a riparian grove. And NW1 is an upgradient side of that grove, that riparian vegetation, and then NW2 is on the downside. So we have shallow groundwater wells, deep groundwater wells, and this is also, this one monitors the contact between the alluvium and the bedrock, and then we have these coastal wells. Up here at Portola, and then Breckenridge Ridge. So, and then we stream gauges of Martini Creek, Daffodil, and then Montara Creek. So we have a combination of stream flow gauging, shallow monitoring wells, deep monitoring wells, and rainfall. So groundwater elevations. There's a lot of lines here, but what's important, you don't have to look at everything, but what's important here is this blue line. Okay, these are years, starting back here in water year 2005, all the way to date. And this is elevation. This is the water level elevation. So the blue line is the Alta Vista well. And then there's also monthly average production rate in gallons per minute. So these two lines, this is the pumping rate of the Alta Vista well. So in the first 5 years, it was bouncing up and down, but it was pretty level. And then this is the increase during the drought, and then back down. Back down to maybe slightly above what it was during the drought, and during those two drought years, 2014 being the extreme at 57% of mean average. And so this is the static water level. And then as soon as you started pumping, the water level draws down. This is a drawdown. This is pretty standard. Well, that's the way the wells perform. You pump it, and it draws down, and increase pumping, you get more drawdown. And then you decrease pumping, the drawdown recovers. So we're seeing this, and these lines here are the bedrock wells, bedrock monitoring wells, and then these two lines are the shallow groundwater wells. And so they're at the highest elevation, and this is the coastal Ocean View Farms well. At the mouth of Daffodil Canyon. So it's the highest elevation, lowest elevation, kind of coastal gradient. And zero would be sea level, of course. So what stands out? What stands out is, for the most case, the shallow groundwater. Shallow groundwater is pretty much independent of pumping at the Alta Vista well, and independent of drawdown in the bedrock. we see this fluctuation. It's pretty flat. When during the wet season, the shallow groundwater recharges, and then dry season it recedes. The natural in the wet season, we see this cycle of wet recharge and then recession. Depending, here's a wet year, 2011, you get more recharge. Dry years you get a little bit less, it draws down more. You see this pretty standard, recharge. Even though there's this drawdown in the Alta Vista well, there's a steady seasonal recharge in the shallow groundwater wells, except for 2014 and 15. We see sort of a breakthrough here, and it's where this is the depths of the 5-year drought. And a combination of this extreme drought, 2014, and increased pumping, potentially increased pumping. It's not sure if it's a direct link, but it does coincide with it. That the drawdown in the shallow aquifer actually showed a breakthrough, significantly deeper lowering of shallow groundwater during those 2 years. And then in 2016, it recovered, back to that standard cycle of recharge. In 2016 was a near normal, and it recharged, but it's back up to normal, and at the same coinciding with less pumping. So there's this kind of suggests that during these extreme droughts at the Alta Vista well, there's potentially show a boundary, a recharge boundary. What the other thing that's important is it never drew below sea level. It was always at a higher elevation than down drainage wells. This is a quick. This is a blow up of that same chart here. I'm showing 2014 and 15 this breakthrough of drawdown. We won't get into that too much, unless you want to. Unless there are questions, we can go back. So we're seeing the same. So what we saw in stream flow. This is a little summary of annual stream flow, average stream flow at the 3 gauges: Martini Creek, Daffodil Canyon, and Montara. And what we see here, Martini Creek, it's through the drought to the 14 and 15, 12 through the 16. Here's rainfall percent of the mean. So 14 here the base flows were pretty steady. It was a little bit lower, but still base flows in Martini Creek really didn't suffer. Base flows, of course, in the wet year are quite higher. The average, you get a lot more runoff. Sorry, not base flows, but this is total discharge. So during the drought, Martini Creek didn't really show much of it showed lower flows, less discharge, but it sustained during the drought. So at Daffodil Canyon, it was lower flows, but also persistent and continuous through the dry season during 2014. However, Montara Creek was not the case. 2014 was basically dry, pretty much. I think it exceeded 1 gallon a minute for 5 days during the whole water year. 2014-15 was back up, and of course, with normal recharge, it recovered pretty quickly. So here we're seeing shallow groundwater levels breaking new lows, and now stream flow in Montara Creek is the other thing we looked at was groundwater age techniques. This came, and we looked at it from a recharge perspective, because we're interested in recharge for this well. And as you started with, I think it goes back to the board asking questions. Paul asked a question, when after this well was drilled and pumping in 300 gallons a minute, he asked a question. He goes, "Hey, are we pumping in ancient water, or are are we sustainable? So this is, back in the early 2000s, the board was pretty progressive and certainly think sustainability and not overpumping the well. So we actually there are 4 different sampling years that we USGS did a sampling in 2011 and balance 2014, 15, 16 to the drought. And we recently did some sampling this past year.
In lieu of time, if we could just
You want to skip through this?
we would just kind of
We're running out of time. Yeah, I put in some extra stuff because I knew you guys were interested. But
And I think what you could do, if you don't mind, if you'd be willing to share your savings to us, so we could,
okay.
that would probably be the best way.
So basically, the results I want. Oh, these are really interesting, but let's see. We won't look at the data, but the results are here. Basically, while pumping at higher, basically what's going on is the well draws, the well has a recharge has been calculated a recharge of 24 years, which is drawing on modern groundwater, basically groundwater that's recharged in recent decades. But during the drought, when you increase pumping and drier years and deeper groundwater levels, you drew on older groundwater. And there's a whole slew of data that kind of supports that conclusion.
Mark, roughly, what is the average age of groundwater we tend to normally,
The average age of the groundwater
that we tend to pump as
is
opposed to?
24 years.
24 years.
That's the average age, and yeah, it's 24 years, and that's an average.
Right.
Basically, groundwater is flowing through different rates and different fractures and different, and it's really a handful of samples
But that says that this is a sustainable well.
Well, it says that recharge is important,
Okay.
and that the well is recharged by rainwater. And what's logical,
Pardon? Is it completely recharged by the?
it is recharged by rainwater. That's correct.
And how many, every year or?
Well, that's a very good question. During high rainfall years like 2017, 2006, 2011, there's a lot more rainfall, longer periods of rainfall, longer storms, persistent storms, and more recharge. And during these super years with 160% of mean, like we had in 1995 and 1998, those 2 years. Actually, I think that was maybe 1998 was maybe 200%. Those are super recharge years, and a lot of this average 24 comes in spurts. 2017, 2006, you get a lot of the recharge during those years, but it averages out to be 24 years.
So to the best of your knowledge, this groundwater is essentially really sustainable.
Yes, it can be sustainable from recharge. And there's 6 different methods we use to calculate this. In general, groundwater gauge techniques are used to support the hydrology, not the reverse. Because there's a lot of uncertainty in each method. The reason you use different methods because each method has its own level of uncertainty, some more uncertain than others. So you collect many different techniques, and then based on the finding of those gauges, you it supports your conceptual understanding of groundwater flow, how recharge works, the
Does
fractures.
it also include population, projected population growth and use?
This has nothing to do with demand. This is about
Okay.
supply.
Just supply only?
Yeah.
Okay, so how are you, 5 more minutes?
5 more minutes, okay. So let's jump to the summary. So in summary, 2012 through 15, the drought conditions, so we had sorry, let me go start. Okay, summary 1. So there's four summary slides. Okay, so the principal pathway of groundwater that enters the Alta Vista well is through these high-yielding joints at 700 feet below the ground surface of 550 feet. And then from 2000, it started pumping in water year 2008. We had a drought from 2007 to 2009. And during that time, the near-surface groundwater, the near-surface waters, the shallow groundwaters, showed apparent independence of, it showed recharge, regular recharge, and independence of pumping the well. Recharge to the bedrock showed higher base flows. We saw higher base flows in the creek. That's another way of looking at things. We have higher base flows in the creek during wet years, lower base flows in the creek during dry years. And the the groundwater was age dated at 24 years. It's classified as modern groundwater, recharged during recent decades. So then 2012 to the 15, the drought conditions were longer and more extreme. At the same time, concurrently, Alta Vista well was used at increased pumping. And then, although stream flows persisted in Martini Creek and Daffodil Canyon, Montara Creek was quite dry during 2014. So we saw stream flow in Montara Creek curtailed, severely curtailed, and base flows. Base flows during water year 2015 were the lowest on record across all stations in the region. We saw that even as far down as Pescadero Creek. So the drought conditions were very severe and increased pumping. We saw that in stream flows and shallow groundwater. Then this basically says a lot of the same things. Shallow monitoring wells showed a drawdown, and then the estimated age the estimated age was older. We saw older modern water, and we also picked up pre-modern water, which could be actually thousands of years old, hundreds to thousand years old. So during the drought, we were getting much less recharge to no recharge. And we were drawing on what was there, older modern water, and then older pre-modern water. Also pre-modern water. Then during 2016, we saw that recovered. Basically, there's a near normal year. Concurrently, the pumping from Alta Vista well had dropped back to pre-drought year rates, and base flows also recovered, and the base flows in the streams recovered, and the shallow groundwater level also recovered, and so we saw the age also recovered. The age of the water rebounded back to like a 24-year, several decade modern groundwater. So for a very short period, we drew on older modern water, and then that kind of recovered. We were back to more younger modern water. 2017, we collected more samples. Those results aren't in yet. We had pretty good rainfall this year, 140% of normal. So we expect to see further, and then pumping off Vista well was continued at normal rates. And as a qualitative check, this is another check on. You always want to look at this from different levels of interest or different perspectives. And one perspective is what if you calculated what area of recharge, given a 4-inch recharge per year, that calculates out to 360 acres. So basically, you would need 360 acres of a watershed recharge to recharge the well. And that corresponds, that's a good qualitative check. It's reasonable. It's not 3,000, or it's not 30,000 acres. It's an area that's less than 1 square mile, and it's comparable to other watersheds in the area. And then seawater intrusion remains physically impossible. So in conclusion, since 2007, the average pumping rate has been 74 gallons per minute. So let's go back to the question, what is sustainable? Basically, during this period of going from a wet cycle through 2 droughts, one extreme drought year, and then back up to a wet cycle, the average pumping rate across that whole cycle was 74 gallons a minute. And this is similar to baseflow in local streams. So it kind of makes qualitative sense that you're pumping a well that's intersecting open fractures in a bedrock aquifer that's at a similar rate as base flows in the stream. And also if you calculate the recharge area, it's a similar watershed area to a lot of the small creeks in the area. So qualitatively, 74 gallons a minute appears to be a sustainable level. So somewhere in that range.
As I'm trying to push it along a little bit.
Okay.
The number 4 point, could you just highlight that for us?
Okay. We talked about that. We talked about recharge. So number 4. So Montara District, the Montara Water Sanitary District, is successfully implementing a habitat-responsible adaptive management approach to manage a complex fractured aquifer. I think this is kind of hats off and hats tipped to the staff at Montara. It's a very complicated fractured aquifer. It's a water that's really quite unique on the coast. It has a lot of uncertainty in its understanding of how it's recharged conceptually, and through this kind of habitat responsible approach, adaptive management monitoring approach, we've kind of focused in on a sustainable pumping rate that works, that has worked, and should continue to work.
Okay.
So I hope that wasn't too long-winded, but thank you very much for your attention and past efforts.
And if you can make those slides available, that would be great.
I can, yes.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
That was
Thank you very
great.
much. Thank you for all your work over the years.
Do you know one or two questions from?
Do you know if your presentation is going to be recorded, your full presentation?
Well, so this was tailored to you guys. That's why I went long, because I put in that whole front end because wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you going to have a poster?
Get your memory. No, not poster. It's an oral presentation. I'll very tweak these figures with 20 minutes. Has to be much more condensed.
So,
Can we put some of your slides up on the wall?
Certainly, yeah.
okay, so I have 1 or 2 questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Turn the light off.
The Montara Creek, in wet years, drawing off of that, does that have any effect on Alta Vista from the standpoint that it helps its recharge rate or just takes the pressure off it? Is there any correlation between drawing down more on Montara Creek in wet years?
During wet years?
Yeah. So like right
see,
now we're pumping a lot out of Montara Creek.
Yeah, but
And very
you
little
have
up.
a diversion upstream.
Yeah.
And you also have the Alta Vista well. But the Alta Vista well is on the ridge, and there's also Daffodil Canyon, which was persistent during the drought. So it's a kind of a combination of. So your question is during wet years.
Yeah.
There's really no issue during wet years on Montara Creek.
Okay.
There's plenty. The shallow groundwater in Montara Creek, which is basically there's all that sediment right in the valley, and that's very easily recharged. It's decomposed granite.
Okay.
It's very easily recharged from stream flow during and rainfall, and that is pretty evident in the data.
Okay, and then also Daffodil or Ocean Farms. When you drilled a well there, what were the characteristics of that well? Did it produce water? Was the water quality good?
Right. Yeah, there are two wells over there. The first one is right next to Highway 1, and that was drilled right in. So that's a marine terrace.
Okay.
So we drilled down to the bottom of the marine terrace. It was, I think, 230 feet or so. And so I was, sitting on top of granite. There's weathered granite. There's this marine terrace. And so that is a shell that's used for monitoring. It pumped. It's productive. And the other one is at the mouth of Daffodil Canyon, and that was drilled a little deeper into the bedrock, so it intersecting some fractures. The fault kind of cuts right at the mouth of Daffodil Canyon, right where the terrace starts.
Right.
There's a fault that cuts it, so we're aiming for that fault. And so we drill. That's also productive too. Now the issue with that is that the piping into your distribution system
is further away.
Pretty far, yeah, expensive.
And then the Portola numbers.
But not high yielding. They're more on the order of 10 gallons a minute.
And that was my recollection, that we didn't even consider it because they were so far away.
And so far away.
And Portola number 3, when it was redone, that is a totally altogether separate aquifer that's drawing off of the Alta Vista.
Well, no, it's also granitic, fractured granite.
Okay.
It's in a different place.
Okay.
It's closer, it's further down Montara Creek, and so all those Portola wells, all 4 Portola wells are granitic wells, and so that was a concern. What's before the district drilled the Portola number 3 deeper, all those wells were 5 gallons a minute.
Yeah.
So they initially started out to be several tens of gallons a minute. So that was the history of granitic wells. It starts at good yield and then it depletes, and then we end up at the 5 gallon a minute well, which is why this is very unique, and we're seeing good recharge along with yields. Portola number 3 went deeper into additional fractures at a deeper depth.
So it would tend to have characteristics more similar to Alta Vista than the Drake and Wagner.
Absolutely.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's deeper fractures.
Got it.
Anything else, guys? Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
That was really neat.
Okay, our third item is review and possible action concerning the district wellness program.
Yeah, thanks, Dwight. Let me pull this item up, but while I do this, so we have to thank our superintendent, Julian Martinez, for actually submitting a request for a grant to the Association of California Water Agencies Joint Powers Insurance Authority, which we're a member of. And so they actually offered essentially little grants to districts like ours for voluntary wellness programs of formal and informal activities. And we received a grant over $280. And so now are challenged with trying to see where are we going with this money, and what would we like to see in the district. Again, I mean, this is for a wellness program that is supposed to, help our employees to with essentially decrease absenteeism, improve productivity, improve employee retention, more energetic, positive, productive workplace overall. And we looked a little bit around, what do other agencies do, and there's a very simple approach that we found also with our neighboring water agency, Coastal County Water District. And they simply have a program where the district allows for an additional $25 a month towards a health or fitness facility of their choice. And that is really done upon proper documentation that's ultimately reviewed and authorized by the supervisor. So what we now would like to do, what we're suggesting to do with the $280 is essentially to start up a trial program over a 1-year period to see how such a program would be received in Montara. There's always questions on who is going to participate. Are all going to take advantage of this? We have 7 employees, full-time employees. So we calculated that to essentially come up with a similar amount, $25 a month, for 7 employees, we would run into a total cost of $2,100 for this first year. Now again, the question is, who's going to participate and over what period of time? So we have now the suggestion to utilize the $280 for this program and ask for an additional $1,820 potentially up to of district funds for contribution to the for a wellness program that essentially allows folks to sign up for a gym, yoga class, whatever it is. Show us proof of payment, and they would receive $25 for that month. So again, the recommendation is to authorize a not to exceed of $1,820 of district funds for contribution to this program. We would come back in a year and report on how this went and what we'd like to do going forward.
Okay, discussion from the board?
And we do have a member of the public who might want to
Please.
chip in as well.
Yes, you have to go to the mic, that's part of the deal.
And
Probably you
actually,
should sign a blue piece of paper too, but maybe Clinton's going to do that for you.
we know him, so we know where to get him. He was actually out until what time tonight? Working on a leave?
Just before 7, just enough
Just
time
before
to throw
7.
on some shorts and actually go to the gym.
All right.
It's my favorite night of the week. It's the Thai boxing class, so I make it a priority to go, even though I was working. The reason I'm kind of here is part of Julian's inspiration was A, he really liked the plan, and B, I had a very minor injury in June with my elbow. I was very supported by the district, which I want to say thanks to that, and got it checked out. Went to physical therapy, got a real reality check on my flexibility, physical weight, blood pressure, a few other things.
You're not getting older, are you?
Coincidentally, yeah. Well, after I was cleared for full duty, I got a great physical therapist that helped me get through the injury. I signed up for a gym in Pacifica. I got a physical beginning of this month. My blood pressure is lower. It's been since I've been to the doctor. I've lost about 10 pounds. I'm feeling better than I ever have. It's something I'm going to do regardless. I'm not really here to ask you guys to do this program. I'm here to say thank you for considering it, and thank you to Julian for putting in the work to bring this here to you guys. I do think my coworkers would participate. It would give us something in common to talk about as far as taking care of our health, something to inspire each other about, something to be positive about in the workplace, which is always a good thing. Considering, I wouldn't say we're short-staffed by any means, but we do everything we can do to keep up, and availability is probably the most important part about being an employee. Being in shape, living a healthy life is gonna, well, make that a lot easier for us, and make it to where your employees are not only physically fit when they are at work, they're available, they're not getting sick as often, and just generally living a healthier life. I just think this is a good thing for the workers and everybody involved, if you guys do decide to do it. But once again, I'm not here to sway your opinion at all. I'm just here to say thank you for considering it.
Well, thank you for coming up and discussing this. Anybody else from the public before I bring it back to the board? Board? Any comments? Second.
That we're gonna do what?
The $1,800, basically, we're voting to support the program.
Okay, and for $1,800, we're going to supply $25 gym memberships. Is that what this is?
It's a reimbursement if it's spent.
They show proof of payment to some sort of a wellness program, and in my opinion, it doesn't have to be a gym membership. It can be anything that contributes to the, whatever, however you want to define wellness, yoga classes.
Okay.
I guess if someone would come forward and say, hey, I paid, for 10 massages, I would be happy to, sign off on that as well.
Okay.
Whatever wellness program, and after proof of payment, we would add $25 to one of the bi-monthly paychecks.
Okay. So, at the present time, when an employee starts, is there any kind of a program of either doing stretch exercises or to do something that sort of, let's say, warms you up to the fact that they're going to be doing physical things all day long?
No,
Okay.
there's not. I mean, we've been thinking about, many different ways. What you could do is, for example, you could get someone in-house. Not for $280. Yes, exactly. But you could invite, for example, someone who provides in-house yoga classes, provides some sort of what you suggested, how to stretch before physical activity. We get safety training. Our employees all receive safety training. So, the basics of heavy lifting, climbing ladders, how to not get injured is really discussed. But do we have some sort of a personal trainer come in? No.
Okay.
I like the idea of the incentive. I mean, $25 a month is not going to pay for the total gym and all. It's just a nice incentive, but so it's just an encouragement. So, and I don't see any downside to this whatsoever. We have a motion, but we need a second.
I'll second and just pitch in. Thank you for the feedback. It's good to hear on several fronts. Glad to be getting better. I'm also glad to hear about the level of interest. I think it's a very good thing. Certainly where I work, the coworkers who work out report all the same kind of benefits. And I'm really glad that Julie kicked this off and that we're thinking about it. I support it.
Jim?
I support it too. Thank you.
Okay. I don't believe this is a roll call vote, so all in favor?
Aye.
5-0. for presenting tonight.
I'm really sore that
Well, you gotta just sort of put the dive in this thing.
Thank you.
Relax.
Once again, it was just, even you guys consider it means a lot to the employees, so the fact that you voted for it will go even further.
Without you guys, we couldn't be sitting here, so it's a team effort.
Likewise.
Thank you.
You guys have a good night.
All right. Fourth item is review and possible action concerning adoption of appropriation limit for fiscal year 2017-2018.
Okay, so the California State Constitution, an article out of it, which is commonly referred to as the GAN Initiative or GAN Appropriations Limit, was adopted in 1980, and it places limits on the amount of proceeds of taxes that state and local agencies can appropriate. So we calculate this every year. It takes into account changes in inflation, population, etc. So our annual calculation this year shows that well, actually, let me point out what goes in here. So counties' change in population, by the way, was 0.56%. I think that's actually somewhat interesting. And the capital personal income was 3.69%. So up by 3.69%. And then we calculate our appropriations limit for the fiscal year 17-18 at $2.2 million. So this is the maximum amount of tax proceeds the district is able to spend in the fiscal year 17-18. Of course, we're receiving much less taxes, altogether around $400,000. So we're way below the GAN limit. So we're required to annually adopt by resolution an appropriations limit for the upcoming fiscal year. Due to how we get our numbers, we can only do this after the beginning of the fiscal year. So our recommendation is to adopt the resolution of the Montara Water and Sanitary District determining the, that's supposed to say 17-18 appropriations limit.
Okay. Any discussion for the public? Or can we have
I'd like to move adoption of the resolution next year.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
This is basically just a no-brainer.
It is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So I understand about the attorney's advice, I have to do a roll call. So, that's
Director Slater Carter.
Aye.
Director Boyd.
Aye.
Director Wilson.
Aye.
Director Harvey.
Aye.
Director Huber.
Aye.
Okay. Now we're into reports. Oh, can't wait for the first one. Sam.
We didn't have a meeting, so very short report.
Captain, you're on that in short.
No, well, let me just say that we do have a stipulated agreement for funding the budget this year. That's the good news. It's unfortunate it couldn't have been passed by the board, but that is what it is. I will also say that this, I am asking the Finance Committee to meet because Sam is having additional expenses this year because of the lawsuit and the additional meetings that we've been having, and so we may be having to come back to the Finance Committee can't figure a way to jiggle the numbers. We may be having to come back to the member agencies for additional funds.
So when you mean the Finance Committee, you mean the Finance Committee of Sam?
Of SAM,
Okay.
which is Scott and...
No, I just want to make sure we're clear on who's Finance Committee.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So-
Thank you, Mark.
So,
That's what it is.
all right. Midcoast.
Well, there is the Mid-Penn Affordable Housing Project, which is an ongoing project, and it has, the Mid-Coast Council has had some meetings on it. I would suggest everyone pay attention to these because it will make a difference in our community. It's 74 units with up to 7 residents per unit. So it's a fairly, can be a fairly substantial impact on the community. The other is that there is a vacancy for the Mid-Coast Council. Laura Stein has moved, and so this is a term ending 2020. You can get the details on applying at midcoastcommunitycouncil.org. Applications are due by Friday, October 20th. And I think it's a worthwhile use of your time. And for the community, I would invite everyone to apply. I will say the Board of Supervisors chose to make it such that people on elected boards on the Mid-Coast cannot serve on the Mid-Coast Council. So none of the members of this board can apply, will have a chance of getting selected for the Mid-Coast Council. I don't know if that's the good news or the bad news. But it's an important place to keep track of what's going on. Also, on October 3rd, there is a Quarry Park Master Plan community meeting, and you can keep up with all of this at the Mid-Coast Community Council.
CSDA?
Nothing to report. There was no meeting, and the next meeting will be in October.
Okay. Attorney's report? Okay. Any director's reports? Anybody? Comments?
Nothing to report.
Okay, so we are going to be going into closed session. And we'll take a break to allow the camera to disassemble.
After one meeting.
And then if we have to report out, we will do so after closed session. So give it a break to allow folks to do whatever they need to do.
It's very hard to get up and move around, isn't it?